Alaikum and salutations, everyone. So, may I have your attentions, please? Hello. Hi. If you can hear me, say hi. All right. So, welcome to the Al-Farabi Hall of IPG KDRI. Give yourselves a massive round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So, for this session, we're going to be a bit relaxed because proceed. So because we're going to be a bit relaxed due to my promise with Dr. Rozi. All right. So, so how is everybody doing? Are you doing well? I can hear you. Okay. So to those in the Pamir booths, I humbly request you to please be seated. So for those watching online, hi, how are you? Of course, I would never forget you. You're honestly, you make our hybrid keynote speech something much more colorful than it already is. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Okay, so how is everyone enjoying the day today? Hello. So I hope everyone's enjoying their day. And honestly, I hope you'll enjoy your entire stay here in IPG KDRI for our Minds conference. Later, we'll be opening the floor for a Q&A session, so please do not be afraid and don't be shy to ask any questions. And to those online, don't be shy to flood our live chat box with any questions towards Dr. Rozi or Professor Williams. To those outside, please make your way in. Come one, come all. Alaikum and salutations, everyone. So again, how are you doing? I can hear you. How are you doing? Okay, give yourselves a massive round of applause for being able to make it here today. Come on. Okay, so welcome to the Al-Farabi Hall of the Institute of Teacher Education, Malaysia. And the Al-Farabi Hall of the Institute of Teacher Education, Dato Razali Ismail Campus. So, is everyone ready for the talk? So I still see some people around walking. So I humbly request you once again to take your seats as our talk is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I would first like to thank Yang Berusaha Dr. Rusmini Bintiku Ahmad, the Rector of the Institute of Teacher Education, Malaysia. Yang Berusaha Dr. Muhammad Nasruddin bin Basar, the Deputy Rector of the Institute of Teacher Education, Malaysia. And of course, how could we forget, Yang Berusaha, Dr. Hajah Narita binti Muhammad Noor, the Director of the Institute of Teacher Education, Dato Razali Ismail, Campus. Give them all a huge round of applause. And to all Institute of Teacher Education directors, deputy directors, fellow members of the floor, and of course, our audience nationally and internationally, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Give yourselves a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to warmly welcome Professor William Timpson as our special guest for this session. So make your way to your seats. Come on, come on. Don't be shy. So we're currently live in Colorado. If you didn't know, we're currently live in Colorado State University. So all of this is being broadcasted internationally. So everyone here will have their faces on the screens of Colorado State University. And to those online, thank you so much once again. And again, don't be afraid to leave any questions in the live chat box. And don't forget to show your support in the chat box below. So if you didn't know, currently we're around 10:30. But in Colorado, it's, if I'm not mistaken, around 8:30 in the evening. So 8:30 in the evening from last night. So thank you so much again to Professor Williams for taking time out of his schedule in the night to be here with us today. So come on, everyone, come on. Don't.
Can you hear me? There's an echo.
Hello. Hi, Professor. Can you see us?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Am I crystal clear?
Very.
All right. So how is it in Colorado right now?
It's wonderful. It's a little hot.
Yeah, it's in the summer, is it?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, is Colorado a four-season state in the U.S.?
Yes.
Oh, so you experience all. So you experience all seasons.
That's right. Snow,
Right.
ice, skiing down mountains.
Okay, so if you didn't know, in Malaysia, we have tropical climates throughout the year. So it's mostly rain and sun. So, it's like a vacation for those from the four-season states.
Wonderful. I'd like to visit.
Okay. So honestly, Professor, how I wished you were here today, physically for our session. You could have enjoyed the beauties of Terengganu, like our sandy beaches and amazing food. Have you been to Malaysia, Professor?
No, I've been to Thailand, Korea, Japan, China, India, Nepal, but not Malaysia.
Wow, quite the traveler are we. So honestly, if I were you, I would put Malaysia on your bucket list to travel to sometimes.
Yes.
Professor,
Yes.
if you don't mind me asking, do you have any other speakers, devices around your laptop? Because around here we're actually experiencing a bit of humming.
Uh, no, there's a echo when I speak.
There's an echo.
Yeah, but no other devices.
Ah, I see. Okay, thank you so much, Professor. Okay, Professor, if you don't mind, we'll start our talk later. Is that okay with you?
That's okay.
In a
That's
short
fine.
while.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Professor. So honestly, how long have you been in the educational field, Professor?
50 years.
50 years.
50.
Wow. 50 years. So, if you don't mind me asking, are you retired or are you actually still teaching?
I'm making presentations to groups like this.
I see, I see. So, honestly, we're very honored to have you here today. You're cut out. So, honestly, we're very honored to have you here today with us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us.
Glad to.
So, do you support our Malaysian teams for the Olympics?
Well, sure. Any evidence of excellence is to be supported and applauded.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor. We'll begin very shortly.
Okay.
Okay. So, for your general information, once again, I remind all of you that this keynote speech is currently being broadcasted to the US, so those nationally and internationally can watch freely as they will. So without further ado, allow me to introduce to you our respected moderator for today's keynote speech. Please welcome Dr. Rozi bin Ismail. If you didn't know, Dr. Rozi has a doctorate in educational management, learning and management, minoring in human resource development and human resource management. And he is currently the deputy director of the Institute of Teacher Education Campus, Kota Baru, Kelantan. So without further ado, I hand over the torch to Dr. Rozi to facilitate our talk for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nazahan, okay, for welcoming me and also Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson from Colorado State University for the session. So, hi, Bill, Prof. Timpson, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Good to see you.
Yeah,
I
good
have
to
to
see you too, Prof.
I have to tell your audiences you are one of
Yeah.
my best students ever.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Just to inform that Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson formerly was my PhD advisor during my PhD at Colorado State University. So it's honorly to bring my advisor, my godfather in states, to Ministry of Education today to be with us. Okay. So, Prof, may we start? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So great to see you with us today virtually with MOE, Ministry of Education, and we expecting that maybe next year we will bring you lively to Malaysia, Prof. Timpson.
Love
And
to.
I hope you are doing well in States. Even you
Yes.
just mentioned about the summer. Okay, I can feel the summer in Colorado is too hot, but during the winter it's too cold. It's
Yes.
minus 29, right? Okay.
Yes.
Before we start the session with your golden insight sharing, let me start with some briefing about the event and of course your bio too. Okay, allow me, Prof. Okay.
Please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here today and to get some insights on what we, the 21st century educators, can do in improving the quality of education for sustainability. Of course, some of us already have the idea that one thing to keep in mind is that to promote critical thinking and spark creativity to shape a sustainable future. This is quite challenging and often scratch our head. How do we, as an educator, are coping up with this matter? To remain competitive and relevant in today's education world, IPGM, as a pioneer for teacher education excellence, we always strive to meet the needs of the digital age. To uphold one of the key initiatives in the Malaysian Education Development Plan, PPPM 2013 to 2025, IPGM and IPGKDR has come to an agreement of organizing this prominent MInD conference. So, Prof, to accelerating this MInD conference is an initiative to improve the IPG or ITE lecturers and student identity to be positively competitive, and it is to uphold the requirements set out in research and innovation management main procedure document. It is hoped that this conference will greatly offer new platform and opportunities for ITE lecturers and students, as well as educators, to sustainably invent various digital innovations and produce research based on education digitalization. Coping up with these challenges in sustainability, which part of Professor Emeritus Timpson's specific area, and diversity of education does not confine here only. It's a globally discussed how our future generation can cope with the advent of the technology, etc., IR 4.0. So for our first keynote, honorably, we have today here with us our guest of honor, my former PhD studies advisor, my mentor, my godfather in states, everything during my authentic journey at Colorado State University. One key person in the area of sustainability and diversity in education. He will share his expertise and insights of the issues, sharing with all of you a little background of his education. He is a retired professor in the School of Education at Colorado State University, completed his first degree in American history from none other than a very well-known university, Harvard University. Upon completing his first degree, he served as a teacher. He then completed his PhD in educational psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson, our guest of honor, has contributed numerous articles, chapters, and research, including several that address issues of peace and reconciliation, sustainability, and diversity. So it's a lot to tell about him. So maybe during the session, he will introduce more about his passion in education, which I feel very lucky to have him as my advisor during my PhD, sponsored by Ministry of Education for my study at Colorado State University. I couldn't thank you enough for being my supervisor and my godfather, Prof. Timpson. So without further ado, the Honorable Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson from Colorado State University, the United States of America, the stage is yours. Please, Prof. Yeah.
Thank you, Rozi. So I want to say I'm honored to be here. I welcome all of you to this conversation. And I want to emphasize that we educators have a critical role around the world in moving away from conflict and looking at solutions, whether that's fighting and wars or between us and the climate. We know the climate is putting pressure everywhere, and we as educators have a critical role to play in that. A couple little stories, though. I have to tell you, some of our best students, in my experience in 30 years, were Malaysian students. They came, they studied, many of them in a new language. And for many of us in America, the idea of studying in a brand new language is intimidating. And they demonstrated wonderful courage in facing up to all that. They brought some diversity to our campus. We are primarily, there are a number of international students in different disciplines, but the Malaysians brought that to the School of Education, and we're profoundly grateful. One quick story. In these graduate classes of 3 hours, we often took a break in the middle, and someone in the class was assigned to bring a snack. So a few crackers, a fruit. The Malaysians, when it was their turn, suddenly there was a spread in the front of the room. There were flowers. There was food of all kinds. They have spoiled us badly that we're still trying to recover. So again, my hats off to all that. And I have to tell you, the experience of working with them inspired me in my international work. I've been to many countries in the world, and I'm hoping to come back to Malaysia with Fulbright Awards and with Rotary Foundation global grants to focus on sustainability and peace building. And there are wonderful opportunities. So let me share with you some of that journey, and I will start my PowerPoint. Hopefully it comes up fine. Can you see that okay?
Not yet, Prof. Yeah.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Do I hit the share? How do I do that? Here's the screen.
Yeah, the technician is doing the arrangement for the sharing. So
Okay.
maybe it takes some time. So maybe you can start.
Okay.
Yeah, the presentation by orally. Yeah, please, Prof.
So the first image you'll see is from Belfast, Northern Ireland. So think about this, 600 years of conflict, 600. In 1998, they signed a peace accord, and it's holding. The paramilitaries on both sides, Catholics, Protestants, put the guns away, and they are enjoying peace and prosperity. At the core is a lot of work by educators to promote critical thinking. How do we move away from violence? And how do we spark creativity and move forward in new directions? Any success on seeing that image, Rozi?
Okay. Give me maybe 1 minute more, Prof, because
Okay.
they going to control it from here, the PPT, the
Okay.
PowerPoint. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay. You can keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So he introduced me in terms of background and history, and I encourage all of you to think about the history of your own country and your own community is important for moving forward. I studied higher education, and then I got interested in cross-cultural contexts and how thinking and learning and creativity can make a difference. So I've had several Fulbright opportunities in Northern Ireland, in Burundi, and in South Korea. And when my image comes back, you'll see I've got a Burundian dancer as well as a Malaysian shirt I was given by several of the students
Yeah,
there.
we can see that Malaysian shirt at your back, right? Yeah.
Yes. So the question in reducing violence, what is the role of educators? What can be taught, studied, and practiced so people can move forward and deal with difficult issues without violence? So know that when you see these slides, Northern Ireland was conquered by the British and exploited beginning in the 12th century. In 1972, the Troubles exploded when the British fired on protesters, killing 14. New and different thinking was needed to prepare for a better, more inclusive, peaceful, and productive future. Here's an image from downtown Belfast, and it shows a building in disrepair with a man with a submachine gun. So what can educators do? How can we support victims and recovery? How can we help people heal the wounds from violence? How can we help people reconcile differences that they have? How can we help people accept responsibility for their actions? How can we help people be of better service to others? And how can we contribute in innovative ways to promote community well-being through open communication, empathy, cooperation, critical and creative thinking? How do we use the talents of all students? So at Colorado State University, Malaysians brought wonderful and different ideas and skills and backgrounds, and we all benefited. So here's another image from Belfast of a gunman, and they are moving past this and into a period of prosperity and acceptance. So what made for the innovations and the changes? First off, it's grassroots. So primarily by women, they had to put the guns away. So think about changes in your own community and what role common citizens play. They signed the Good Friday Peace Accord in 1998. It still holds. Guns were decommissioned and the threat level decreased dramatically, and the European Union funded mini grants for peace building startups. So that's one thing to think about. Where can we get support for innovations? This is a picture of an integrated school. For many, many years, you had two school systems, the public school for Protestants, the Catholic school system for Catholic students. Parents got together and said, we want our students studying together. And so integrated schools were created and a common curriculum that did not blame one side or the other, promoting critical and creative thinking. Here are two students. They like being in an integrated community. There are still threats on the outside for them, especially the boy, to join one gang or another. They are happy in this integrated environment. So what can educators do? We can help people research problems, help them collect and organize data, help them generate ideas, help them test different hypotheses, help them implement new curriculum, and commit to evaluation, and then be open to modifications. We can do that in our classes, we can do that in our schools, we can do that in our communities and our nation. And educators can lead the role in helping people do all that to find a better way forward. Here's a peace fence in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. On the left side is what's left of the Protestant community. On the right side is the Catholic community, and there used to be many, many, many problems here. The fence was put up to stop the raiding back and forth, and now things are much calmer. This is a wall, you can imagine, you probably never heard of it, in downtown Belfast. And people are invited to come and draw. I myself came and wrote this. Come teach us about peace and reconciliation. So from my 2002 book on teaching and learning peace, I emphasize communication and cooperation, critical and creative thinking. These skills can be taught, studied, and practiced in safe environments, in schools, colleges, universities, in churches and community groups, in conferences like this. We have to help people think across academic disciplinary silos, and meetings like you're having today can help do that. And again, educators can lead the way to innovation and sustainable progress. So here's a mural on a building from 1972 when the soldiers fired on protesters. A lot of people were angry. 14 people died. I think 17 were wounded. Here's a mural on a building of people that were killed and their faces, and the ancestors and descendants, and many wanted revenge, and that's what kept the fighting going and the conflict going. So we needed educators at the forefront to shift away from retaliation. Here's a book I finished in 2019, Learning Life's Lessons, Inspirational Tips for Creating Peace in Troubled Times. So whenever there's a conflict, looking for places where people have resolved those conflicts peacefully. So connecting historical lessons to today's conflicts and challenges, offering a range of ideas that have proven effective in the past, focusing on peace building, sustainability, diversity, and experiential learning. So here's an example. In September of 1620, the Mayflower sailed from England bound for the New World, landed in New England, and it was a great adventure. However, in the first year of settlement, half the colonists died. So in this book, we talk about experiential learning. How do we encourage students, co-workers, friends, and family, even when they are struggling? How do we help them build confidence that underlies their willingness to explore new ideas, to try different perspectives, to learn from mistakes, and to persevere? So here's an example. This is a business in Northern Ireland, TREE, Timber Recycling Eco Enterprises, sustainable peace building. So we included some of this in a book we wrote in 2017, Practical Tips for Teaching Sustainability, Connecting the Environment, the Economy, and Society. Know that multidisciplinary thinking can spark innovation. Sustainability we're using as defined, promoting the interconnected health of society, the economy, and nature. The interconnected health of society, the economy, and the nature. We have to pay attention to the climate issues, to the health of our entire populations, and to the health of our economy, our people working and having resources for themselves. Educators at all levels can help innovate responses to environmental threats. So here are the two fellows, carpenters, helping to teach young people new green skills. They were taking wood that otherwise would have been thrown away and retooling it into products, stools and toys, etc. Number one, so they were reducing waste. That's very important skill today in this world. There's so much waste, so much plastic waste. The earth is struggling. But part of that was to teach young people, especially the males who were out involved with military, to learn new green marketable skills. And then this was fascinating. These were not educators, but they learned from educators to put Catholic and Protestant youth working together, and by that way, to unlearn hatred and produce marketable products. If any of you have been on a team, you know how quickly you bond with other team members, and that's the idea here. So here's another book we wrote, Teaching Diversity, Challenges and Complexities. Again, multidisciplinary perspectives stimulate creativity. We can help people unlearn prejudice and hate. We can use the power of teamwork and shared goals to develop positive interdependence. We can learn about empathy and appreciate differences that spark new innovative thinking. So the benefit of diversity is not just getting along with neighbors, but different thinking, different cultural backgrounds spark innovative thinking in ourselves. Here's the Nobel Peace Prize winner from 1976, Mayred Maguire, leading these grassroots efforts at sustainable peace building and challenging all of us to be innovative. So here's another book, Practical Tips for Teaching Peace and Reconciliation. Again, multidisciplinary to spark new thinking, using international case studies. Peace building concepts and practical ideas can be taught and studied and practiced. We can focus on reconciliation of positive community values and understand the value of studying peace and the skills needed to move forward through conflict toward a positive future. This can all be done, and educators can lead the way. So as opposed to those murals of gunmen, here's a mural of rainbows and kids singing and enjoying life. We can find new ways to decorate our communities. Here's another book we wrote on experiential learning. Again, multiple intelligences. We can think, we can learn, we can create, and we can manage our emotions more effectively. We can commit to democratic, interactive, and cooperative experiences. We can seek alternative paradigms, consider practical recommendations for alternatives to narrow curriculum in the classroom, and we can tap the benefits of service learning where young people go out into the community. Here's a fellow, one of my heroes. His wife was killed in a bomb, and her dad. For 2 years, he grieved and thought about joining the paramilitaries to get revenge. Instead, he decided to make a commitment to improve his nation with some creative efforts. So here's an example of a book on case studies we wrote. Again, multidisciplinary, holistic thinking, not just within one discipline of history or language. Examples of innovative thinking from around the world and historically. And then we use case and problem and project-based learning that are used effectively in professional schools of business, law, medicine, veterinary medicine, and engineering. So there's a whole area of curricula that we could do more with. So back to Alan. He decided to pull together people who were suffering from the violence and have them collaborate on art. This is a piece that people came together to draw and create. Here they are in a workshop, painting and sharing their ideas. Now they're laughing here, but know that there are also a lot of tears as they wrote about, painted their particular struggles, what they were suffering with. Then they decided to take it out into the community and to educate others about what they were learning about healing from trauma. How do we support something like this? Who will fund these efforts? How can schools, colleges, universities, churches, and community groups respond to these innovations? Could this kind of program help communities think differently about the challenges they face? So here are two women. The woman on the left had there was an assassination attempt at her colleague coming out of a building, and the bullet ricocheted and it ended up near her heart, inoperable. The woman on the right is the daughter of a IRA combatant who was in jail or on the run. So her family were the terrorist family in the community. They were very angry about their suffering, but they agreed to come together to talk to ex-convicts, the guys who were doing the shooting and the bombing. And they came out of it a weekend, Friday night, Saturday, half a Sunday, with a new excitement about helping their country move forward because they were understanding more about the people on both sides of the divide. Very exciting to see their commitment. So here's another book of case studies. Again, multidisciplinary for innovation, incorporating social and emotional learning. That's what these two women had to do. Bridging polarized divisions. You could think of what's a deeper division than a victim and someone with a gun or a bomb. And they practiced listening and empathy and finding understanding. And as a way to address the suffering and the call to find new ways forward. This is a woman, Maureen Hetherington, who helps support these projects. This is a mural in Derry in Northern Ireland of reaching across the divide, the Irish and the Protestant youth. So here's an example. On the left is a drummer representing the Protestant British tradition. On the right is a dancer representing the Catholic tradition. Instead of just celebrating one or the other, this mural celebrates both. So let me shift you now to Burundi, East Africa. Over my shoulder, you can see the drummer and the t-shirt that I wear, Sustainable Peace Building, along with my shirt from Malaysia. Very proud in my wardrobe. So I got a Fulbright Specialist Award, and I'd like all of you to be thinking about how you could use the Fulbright Award to come and study in the US. We'd love to have you. I worked at the University of Gozi in Burundi and connected them with Colorado State University with an international memorandum of understanding, and then joined Rotary and built on that with 3 global grants. If you have a chance, check out the opportunities that are possible through the Rotary Foundation. They offer scholarships for study abroad. They offer a fully funded 2-year master's degree in peace studies at 7 universities around the world. It's very competitive, but if you get in, it's all expenses paid, all expenses paid. So think about that. We can do this in Malaysia. So here's Burundi, right next to Lake Victoria. Rotary has 7 of these international centers for peace and conflict studies with fully funded scholarships for those admitted. You can see above the name Burundi, Ngozi. We went there because they were peaceful despite violence and the civil war that broke out all around Burundi. And that's what Elise Boulding wants us to do, find places where peace has happened. So the tragedies in this country, they were invaded and colonized by Germany and then the Belgians. And a racist hierarchy was imposed that pitted one tribe against the other. The minority Tutsis were put in control, even though they were only 15% of the population. After they declared their independence in 1962 from Belgian overlords, the resulting civil war saw 1 million killed, 10% of the population, with another million or so fleeing as refugees. Brutal, brutal violence. And because the Europeans imposed this racist hierarchy that the minority Tutsi were superior. So this is the only time this has happened in my life. This is a national park, and we needed a military escort because of the threats. This is a typical village in Burundi, very poor, one of the 4 poorest in the planet. And so a lot of creative thinking is necessary to move forward. Look at this picture. These are bicycles. There may be 10 of them here, young men, and they're working. These are bicycle taxis. So these young men wait for someone who needs a ride. They sit on the back. The problem, though, for the government and the culture is that these young men should be in school learning. They're not learning much by being out there on their bicycle taxis. So from the book, Learning Life's Lessons, here's another idea. Understand the tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell, in that book, describes how decades were required to get the critical mass of public support to achieve many of the U.S.'s greatest successes. And that's true in Malaysia as well as every other country. What does it take to get a country, a people to move forward? So the question, how does Burundi promote public support for education, economic development? And I challenge any of you, all of you, reflect on various political changes in your own country. When enough people are inspired to come together for a long enough time and exert enough pressure, a sustained change can occur in actions and beliefs, and educators can help lead the way. So here's another difficult situation. It's very hilly. These fellows are on bicycles are holding onto a truck to get up a hill because they can't afford a car. Very dangerous, but it's one way to keep moving, and they showed their creativity and their courage. So here's a young fellow. Listen to this story. Born in 1973, identifies as Hutu. That's the majority that was oppressed by the Tutsi and the Germans and Belgians. He's a law student. Quote, people told me about the killing of educated people. Discrimination in favor of Tutsis, the other tribe, was evident. Eventually, they fled to Rwanda. But remember, in Rwanda, you had a genocide in 1993, and they had to go to the Congo. When Rwandan forces attacked the refugee camp in the Congo, he says he fled to Burundi. It was impossible to join his family, impossible. What's the relationship there to innovation? Clearly, for me, it's resilience. Look at that smile. Despite all that he has suffered, he is going forward with positive attitudes. Here's the provost at the University of Ngozi. Unlike many teachers who will say, oh, we have to memorize everything about math or science, he says, emotions have much to do with violence and war. We must innovate and learn to think clearly and not just react. We must innovate and learn to think clearly and not just react. So this is a book we wrote about our experiences in Burundi. Ongoing work supported by 3 Rotary Foundation global grants, also supported by many grants from colleagues and friends. Young Rotary Club that supported these global grants, they take on as part of their mission to help support other communities. In this case, they identified a poor community in a mountain area that had horrible water, and they put in a water system so that the animals would not be drinking from the same place as humans. They were having horrific health problems. So now they have a much better water system and much better health. So Rotary takes on this notion of service, and that helps drive their creativity. So here's another example. Born in 1980, he identifies as a Hutu, that's the majority. He's an instructor at the university. He says, when the conflict of 93 erupted after the Hutu president was killed, we heard bombers and left our house. We heard bombs and left our house. Soldiers were killing people. Soldiers were killing people. He obviously is very intelligent, and he uses that to innovate and find ways forward for himself and his family. Here's a young woman, fourth-year communication interpretation student. She says, I am more hopeful now that I have a better chance to graduate, get a job, and have a decent life. People have seen so many difficulties. They could share their experiences and how to live in peace with each other. Poverty has been a major factor in causing conflicts. Politicians also create problems when they fight for power. We must tell the truth. We must tell the truth. What I hear in that is hope, and that's leading her to innovate. These are teachable ideas and skills. There's emotional intelligence here, expressing emotions appropriately and managing anger. Critical and creative thinking, analyzing problems, synthesizing ideas from diverse sources, exploring options, and evaluating possible solutions. These are all teachable and learnable. So in that book, Teaching and Learning Peace, I describe the complexities in peace building. Peacekeeping, for instance, how do we separate those in conflict? Think of the Ukraine and Russia. How do we separate them so they can talk? Peacemaking, how do we help them create new policies so they can live near each other in peace? And finally, peace building. How do we help them communicate, cooperate, negotiate, mediate, think critically, heal wounds, and more? They're a long way from that, it seems like that, but we have to keep trying to step in and change all that. Every class, every subject at every level can use more cooperative learning, where people learn to communicate and help each other. Discovery learning, that's the essence of creativity. Emphasis on critical and creative thinking to move forward. And I myself have taught these for 44 years at every level and in every subject area. Here's another fellow from Burundi. He says, my mother and father were Hutus, but I identified as Burundian. Poverty was the real reason for the fighting, and some politicians incited violence. I was protected by teachers. You hear that? I was protected by teachers. Critical role. He's had some good fortune, and he's experienced innovation. So the cultures of peace, at least Boulding sees we need more best case thinking, like talking to these young people who have powerful, important stories to tell. We can and should study these innovations that promote sustainable ways forward. Here's the University of Gozi, founded on a commitment to the innovation needed for sustainable peace and development. We want to build on current research to become a model at the University of Gozi for schools, colleges, universities, and communities in Burundi, the US, and elsewhere, where conflicts or threats of violence undermine the well-being of communities, the environment, and the economy. Here's another fellow, born in 1988, second-year communication and interpretation student, identifies as Tutsi. Quote, my father was a lecturer in the Gozi region when some people tried to kill our entire family. We escaped. So there's something about survival and having another day forward that's critical to innovation. Conflicts can be opportunities to innovate. Conflicts can be opportunities to innovate. Deepen learning, problem and case-based learning, to overcome differences, to explore creative alternatives, to accomplish difficult tasks, to move forward in constructive ways, to heal wounds and build community, develop emotional intelligence, and overcome fear. So conflicts can help us do all that and more. Here are some of the students I work with at the University of Gozi. So using case and problem-based learning, active, interactive, and cooperative learning, core skills for peace building. So in our classes as educators, we can do more of this. Focus on deeper learning through critical and creative thinking, core skills for understanding the past, improving the future, and preparing for the future. So here's restorative justice. Think about the criminal justice you have here. A friend took the money of the fellow on the right there. He could have called the police and had the thief arrested. Instead, he allowed a friend to come and mediate, and the three of them developed a plan for the thief to pay back the funds. They are now good friends again. So instead of jail and punishment, the focus was on learning and healing. So again, back to learning life's lessons. We had the attacks of September 11th. For teachers at all levels, consensus is well established as a mechanism for encouraging listening. Commitment to consensus, where everyone agrees, forces everyone to take the time to understand the range of opinions and explore alternative solutions. Many of us in the U.S. are very unhappy that some in the U.S. used this attack to rush to war, and a horrific mistake. 10 years in Iraq should never have happened, in my opinion. Here's another fellow from Burundi. A war began in Burundi after the Hutu president was killed. Poverty may have been a factor. There were also power differences in response. The University of Gozi was founded on principles of peace and reconciliation. So he can connect the principles he's learning with innovation. The Graduate Institute of Peace Studies in Korea, innovative peace building. Very international student body. I had the chance to spend a full semester there. And interestingly, even though the North Koreans were firing missiles, many in this class wanted to study how the Germans were able to reunify. So the DMZ is the most heavily militarized border on Earth. This is what Seoul looked like after the war. Devastated. Every city in South Korea. Poverty, suffering. They needed innovation to move forward. So 5 million people died during the war. They ranged from 50 to 53. More than half were civilians. Virtually all of Korea's major cities were destroyed. More than 162,000 South Koreans were killed, 40,000 Americans. North Korean losses estimated at 215,000 and 406,000, while China lost 180,000. Horrible war. But this is fascinating. In downtown Seoul, the country has innovated in supporting synergy, initiative, and innovation with this DDP Development Center. People in the community can come and use it to plan, consider, evaluate new ways forward. And you have to know, South Korea has had the fastest economic development in the world, coming out of complete devastation after the war, the fastest in the world. And one of the reasons is this commitment to national innovation. They also commit to healing. Here's a statue of two brothers that were separated by the war, coming together and re-embracing. Maybe they can reunify as East and West Germany did. So create common learning communities for peace and reconciliation from our book, Learning Life's Lessons. Know that Costa Rica abolished its military in 1948 and has prospered in a region that has been troubled for years of unrest, dictatorship, and military takeovers. Inspired by the commitment, the United Nations established the University of Peace, and I went there recently. Peace building and innovation. Its headquarters are in Costa Rica in Central America, a country distinguished by a long tradition of democracy, peace, and prosperity. They have 150 students, 6 faculty members. Here are photographs of some of the graduates created by the United Nations. A beautiful country if you get a chance to visit. I'm sure some of your coasts are like this as well. In 2007, the president declared peace with nature. So in my work, I'm focusing, yes, peace with others, but peace with ourselves, anger management, for example, and peace with nature. Look at this, the top 20 countries for sustainable happiness. The U.S. is 122nd. You can see that at the top. Costa Rica is number 1. There are a number of countries in your area, Thailand, for instance, that are on the list. Indonesia. Minister of Environment and Energy says, we are a small country with big goals. Our pioneer spirit is what sets us apart. The country has established and achieved goals that have set an example to the world. We are the first country without an army. They invested that money into education and health. The first tropical country that has reverted the process of deforestation, a real commitment to make peace with nature, and taking actions toward becoming the first carbon neutral country. That's sustainability, and they're moving ahead. Here's another image, beautiful again. They were given the award of the Champions of the Earth, the UN's highest environmental honor for sustainable practices and being an example for others. Beautiful mountains, and using renewable energies. No fossil fuels have been burnt to generate electricity since December 2014. No fossil fuels. In 2017, they had a record 300 days of renewable power. Here's an example from Thailand. I went to visit the Rotary Peace Center because they are promoting innovation. I got to stand next to one of the soldiers who protects tourists, and I was there as a tourist. Look at this. Soldiers holding flowers. There were a lot of demonstrations when I was there. They made me nervous when I saw the soldiers. But when I saw these soldiers holding flowers, I had to smile. This was different. And again, these soldiers are working with the Peace Center to come up with innovative ways of offering security, but protecting. Here's something I try. I don't know if any of you do, but I would encourage you, think about meditation. Everyone can develop mindfulness as a way to stay clear about what changes need to happen, how we can innovate. So that's it. I want to thank you and open up for any questions. And we have 5 minutes left before, even though we started late. So let me know what works.
Thank you, Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson, far from Colorado State University, to our program today at MInD in Malaysia. Before that, Prof, I would like to introduce our guest of honor also in the hall today. Let me introduce our beloved rector, okay, Dr. Rosmini Ku Ahmad, and then also the deputy rector, Dr. Nashruddin, and also the director of the host of the MInD program for this year, Dr. Hajah Narita, okay, from IPG Campus, Dato Razali Ismail. So before that, we go to all the session that briefed by you just now. It was remind me back about my class with you.
Yes.
When I was in Colorado State University, more about peace, diversity, and also sustainability. I learned a lot from you, Prof, about how to innovate the diversity and sustainability in education, because we have to see out of the track about how to involve the diversity and sustainability in the education, because it's something that not regular things happen in Malaysia, but with the ideas that you gave to us, to Malaysia students during our PhD decade, I think we can bring a lot to Malaysia Ministry of Education in our future heading, especially for Education 2030. So maybe we go to the second session for the Q&A. Yeah, we have two person that willing to ask question to Professor William Timpson. So before that, maybe Rector, if you have any question to Professor William Timpson, anything about teacher training or teacher education? None? Okay. Okay, actually the question we prepare for our minister, but unfortunately he's not around. So the TKSU and also director, but it's okay. Yeah, so we would like to invite Dr. Umar Man, okay, the chair for the international school from the Genting Highland International School, yeah, for a question to Professor William Timpson. Please, Doctor. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Rozi.
Yeah. Prof. Timpson, I hope you can hear from Dr. Umar, yeah, the voice.
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay, please.
Okay, thank you. This 4 or 5 words from you, creating and innovating with art, really very catching to me. Well, I am Dr. Umar. I am doing research on creativities, on arts, specifically on creative writing among students. I'm a researcher at Aswara, Akademi Seni dan Warisan. Normally in education, we are very familiar with two approaches of research, quantitative and qualitative. And also in education, we have action research. But we are promoting in Aswara, we call it the Academy for Research on Culture and Heritage, where culture is very important in education. Normally, we are so used to hear in our country about STEM, science, technology, and engineering, and so
STEM,
on.
yes, STEM.
Yes, yes.
Science,
But
technology,
we don't
English.
have much, I would say, special emphasis on arts, and specifically in creative writing. So I see that creative writing is also creative. We are teaching our students how to be creative. And our popular approach here is practice-based research, meaning that we do research based on the practice itself. In teacher education, we used to have PLC, Professional Learning Community, and also CPD, Continuous Professional Development, which I'm also involved in one of the program in the Ministry of Education through the scholar, they call it the Trust School program, where I used to observe teachers doing CPD and PLC. So I would like to know how popular is the approach called practice-based research in USA, and how could it be adaptable to the condition and situation of our country? If I may add, your emphasis uh, in your lecture just now, more on, we use about war in the, in Ireland, in the, in Burundi, the case of Tutsi and all this, and also in some of the other countries, you see. But in Malaysia, our last, the so-called war ended in 1960 when the communist was ended, and before that, the Japanese in World War II. And since that time, we are quite in a very peaceful situation. So may I have some comment from you? Thank you, Prof.
Yes.
Yeah, please, Prof. Yeah, the answer is from you, please.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciated that background information. One thought, given what you just said about how you've been peaceful, is I would like to see more educators from around the world come to Malaysia to study what you've accomplished and how you've done it, because you haven't devolved into war. So that's one thought. Another, and Rozi can talk about this, is I've published 2 books of case studies that feature the writings of students. So you mentioned writing, and it was important for me that not just the professors are writing and getting published, but we get students involved in the process. So I have 2 books that I have the copyright on, and I'd love to reestablish them, but as a model for Malaysia to think about how do we honor the creativity in students and get them writing and contributing to this conversation. So case studies, I like that a great deal. And you saw in that example in Northern Ireland of people who have been through horrible situations using art, like you said, the creativity, to take what they've learned out into the community. And I think that was a powerful message. And I'm glad to see you're focusing on art, because in the US, I think there's been too narrow a focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we've forgotten the power of writing, of reading, of listening, of discussing, of cooperating. We have to have all of that. The threat of climate change requires that we have all those skills. So I celebrate and applaud what you're doing. And I think I would love to see us working together, perhaps with Fulbright scholarships and Rotary Foundation, to collaborate and share our success stories.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Timpson. I hope that's answering your question, Dr. Umar, regarding on the question just now. So we have a second question. At least we have 5 questions today. Is it okay with you, Prof. William? Okay, yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
the question session, it comes through my text. It's from Fatin Suryati from Terengganu, IPG, or Institute Teacher Education from the host of today, Dato Razali Ismail Campus. Her question is, Professor, how education helps to eliminate discrimination or stereotyping? Yeah.
Great question. Many countries on the planet are struggling with that one. And several examples from my presentation that I saw in Northern Ireland. Remember, 600 years of violence. So one, they got people on both sides of the conflict to work together, young men in particular, on a common goal. That's by far the most powerful way to reduce prejudice and discrimination, is get people working together. Another is to emphasize listening skills, empathy skills. And so you saw the victims sitting down with the assassins and getting to know each other, in thinking about a way forward. In Korea, you saw that statue of soldiers from North and South embracing. So using images and art to celebrate how we come together and cross those differences, even when that's been difficult. So I think we know a lot. Teamwork is critical. Teamwork that focuses on common goals, and study. We have to study each other's cultures. We have to study each other's history and find those success stories where people have innovated, and study them, and not just assume that one group of people have all the answers. That's what I would say.
Great, great, great. Yeah, really agree with you, Prof. Okay, so we have the third question, and today now is more live in the hall. It's from Mr. Nazahan, a student from Institute Teacher Education of the host for today. Yeah, please, Nazahan. Yeah. Nazahan, yeah, please.
So thank you so much, Dr. Rozi, for the questions just now. So now I've collected a question from Muhammad Farhan bin Muhammad Nasim from the unit of TESOL 2 of PISMP June 2021 intake. So he directed this question towards Professor Williams. Hypothetically, in a classroom setting, how would you personally handle a student that is prejudiced towards a certain demographic?
Yeah, thank you, Nazahan. So, Prof, yeah.
Great question. And I've had lots of examples of that, from teaching middle school to high school to college to university. Again, I'll repeat, getting people working together on a common project. So you put them together despite their differences, and they have to be good teammates. If you know anything about sports, you can have people who dislike each other, but they're on the same team with the same goal. And very soon they start liking each other and appreciating each other because they're on the same team. So that's probably the most powerful. And the other would be to be willing to study the process of deeper communication. So listening, empathy skills, understanding people who are different, stretching your own thinking to understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. So study and practice and being on the same team is by far, I think, the most critical.
Okay, okay, Prof. So I think we goes to the last question. Okay,
Yes.
It's from Marwan Terengganu, and it's all about critical thinking or thinking design. I remember once of the class that I had with you during my stay at Colorado State University. You guide us more about design thinking and education. And during that time, I can see far, for about 20 years from 2010 when I was in States, that you say that on 2030, it's going to be happen big agenda for education. And it's true. Now people are talking about sustainable development goals, heading education 2030. And it was the same that you mentioned to us in the class about how the world is heading to more peace in education, in education 2013, how we design the education on that year. So the question from our student, teachers training student, Prof, what do you think is a good example of critical thinking and education design for educators? I think it's a heavy question.
Yeah,
From a,
great question.
yeah, but that's our student, our
Yeah.
institute teacher education student, very critical thinking.
That's
So
great.
we hope to hear from you the best one. Yeah.
That's great. So last spring, I got to visit Costa Rica, as I mentioned, and 1948, right? Central America had been infected by a series of military coups and violence and struggles and all. And against all sort of common wisdom, Costa Ricans came together and said, you know, we want to stop this violence, this craziness. We want to abolish the military and invest in education. Education will take us forward. And since that time in 1948, 70 years ago, they have been the most prosperous and the most peaceful, despite violence throughout Central America. Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras have all had horrific levels of violence. So Costa Rica said, no, we want to invest in education and educators to take us forward in a new way and provide for the health. And it's proven itself. So I would say one way is to study places in your own community, in your own schools, neighboring schools, where people have been successful and solving problems and moving forward, and use those as a way to stimulate your own thinking.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Emeritus, Dr. William Timpson. And I would like to say that so many countries that we follow during your speech today, except Malaysia, that you haven't come yet, and we would like to invite you to come and visit Malaysia and do some collaborative in education in future. And we really welcome you physically, Prof, not virtually, next year maybe, and hope that we can gain a lot of knowledge from your side. And also you also can learn a lot of things about Malaysia education, which that we are really heading to the best of education on 2030.
So I would
Thank you so much, Professor.
I would love to do that. And one way forward is with a Fulbright Award. I have some
Fulbright Award. Yeah, I know.
We would love to come and work in Malaysia for a few weeks, and then let that build on itself. So love to do that.
Yeah, I would like to share this with our rector, rector, that Professor William Timpson also the chair for Fulbright scholarship or award from the West United States. So maybe our future collaboration with Prof is about having the Fulbright awards to our student, that maybe for exchange and also a program to United States in the future. Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Professor. It seems that we are putting our heads together in these issues, and maybe some measures can be taken into consideration so that we can empower our educators at Institute Teacher Education of Malaysia to endure digital era.
Great.
So it seems that we have come to end of our fruitful discussion, really fruitful. If may, I would like to extend more 2 or 3 hours to have a lecture with you, Prof, because within 3 years, when I was in the States, having you as my PhD advisor, it's always something I learn new every day during your lecture. So thank you so much for us. So I'm going to take this opportunity to extend my gratitude and appreciation to IT Institute Teacher Education, Campus Dr. Razali, the host for today, Institute Teacher Education Malaysia, and of course to the Ministry of Education, especially. Hopefully that the key points highlighted will help us to see big picture of why it's imperative for us, the educators, to nurture the creative and critical thinking, especially to our students. New knowledge created hopefully will be impactful to our education system and contribute to the development of Malaysia education, especially heading Education 2030. So I will end this session with a poem special for you, Prof. Okay.
Yes.
This euphony is exciting and new, like a melodious chime. It's a pleasure meeting you after about 10 years, hoping to meet again another time. Thank you so much, Prof. A big applause to Professor Emeritus Dr. William Timpson from Colorado State University. Thank you, Prof. And
you.
we will be recording all the session today, and we will email to you soon. Okay, thank
Very
you so
good.
much, Prof. On behalf
Thank you.
of Ministry of Education Malaysia. Thank you again, Prof.
Yes. All right. Be well. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you so much. So that's the end of session. Thank you. I pass back to Nazahan. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you to Professor Emeritus William Timpson for sharing valuable information about nurturing critical thinking and sparking creativity. And special thanks to Dr. Muhammad Rozi for being an exemplary moderator for the keynote speech today. Give him a round of applause. For those with any unanswered questions, don't be shy to leave them in the live chat box on our IPGM Live and our YouTube channels live. Our diligent secretariats will collect your questions and will hand them over to Dr. Rozi to be responded to appropriately. Thus marks the end of our keynote speech for today. I hope that with our Minds event, the doors of opportunity to establish global connections and networking between Colorado State University and the Institute of Teacher Education Malaysia opens wider ever than before. We would also like to thank everyone for making this keynote speech a huge success in conjunction with the Persidangan Minda Inovasi Dinamik Institut Pendidikan Guru MInD IPG tahun 2022. And don't forget to check out our MInD Parme booths, and also don't forget to visit the food trucks at the parking lot outside the hall. And if possible, stop by the Jabatan Bahasa Bahasa or JBB's booth, where you can find pre-loved clothing from all ages. Thank you so much, everyone, and have an amazing day.